Welcome back to Disquiet Time. Ann and Kelly here. We are sitting here having supper. You might hear some munching with Kathy and Teresa. And we are talking about a trip we took this summer to Jefferson City, Missouri to see the penitentiary, which is supposed to be haunted. We took a tour. So we're going to talk about that tonight. But first, Ann was going to talk a little bit about the history of the penitentiary.
And some of it, as we kind of get into stuff, it'll probably just tie into what we saw when we were there. First of all, the Jeff City State Penitentiary was the construction start date was 1834.
Which is pre-Civil War, to put that in perspective. That's crazy.
We're talking like 30 years pre-Civil War, 3 decades. As with everything, it was actually as much a political decision as anything else. They decided to put it there, not because this was somehow a great location for it, but because they wanted to keep Jefferson City as the seat of power in the state. It was still a fairly new state.
At that point,
yeah. I mean, it still is. And that's kind of how they cemented it, is that they had this great big brand new state penitentiary. Its original budget was set at $250,000.
Ooh.
No, I'm sorry, $25,000. And that is today approximately $861,000. So the original budget to build a federal prison in 1834 was under $1 million today. But a project like that today, that's going to start in the tens to hundreds of millions today.
Yeah.
But you guys want to know how they did it?
Slave labor? Oh,
essentially.
Yeah.
The first prisoners were actually housed there starting in 1835, so the prison was not officially open. Those original 15, they actually quarried the stone for the majority of the construction in that phase.
So,
yes, slave labor, prisoner slave labor. They actually opened it and housed 15 prisoners before it was open, just so they could build it with free labor. We're going to come back to that later, too, when we talk about the warden's house that we're looking at across the street. Yeah. Those 15, they quarried the stone. Those
part
15
of the whole Missouri
inmates.
Compromise thing of them getting in to be a state as a slave state, even though they were not something.
Well, that's how you get around the slave thing, because it was prisoner labor.
Yeah.
And the prisoner labor thing becomes...
I heard an interesting story on NPR about how that still is what happens in prisons.
That still happens.
It absolutely does. And it actually plays a major role later because the town got tired of it. But that comes in a little bit later.
No, I remember you talking about the
it was competing with the other trades.
Yes, that becomes a big problem later. But right now, those 15 original inmates, 11 of them were St. Louis, and 14 were in for just larceny. You were sentenced to build your own prison by quarrying the rock and building it because you stole something.
And not even necessarily that.
The 15th guy did kill somebody. He stabbed him during a bar brawl.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, you steal something, and who knows how big. I wasn't able to find anything on who they were. But yeah. Yep, larceny. It wasn't even like they put a bunch of murderers or somebody that's like, well, go ahead, work yourself.
Maybe they were white collar. They absolutely deserved it.
Well. Yeah, they probably.
Maybe that's why that first building was better than the rest of them. It was actually built by prisoners.
That's true.
They actually prisoners had a big part in building most of this campus.
I would not surprised by that, but I would guess that maybe the fact that they were larcenists rather than people, really, truly hardened, horrible criminals, maybe is the reason they got chosen to be the ones to do it. Because they were under less supervision. Probably
like trustees.
Yeah, because they weren't, they weren't inside a prison wall. There's nothing.
They started the construction. There was some housing, there were some walls.
But
they probably were not high flight risks. No.
Nowhere near as secure as the final prison ended up being, even the first iteration of it. So
right, no, and it couldn't have been.
So I'm guessing that's maybe why they chose those people.
That they would have been a lower class because that is a very harsh sentence.
Oh yes, it definitely is.
Build a prison, quarrying rock. That is not. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy with modern equipment, let alone then.
Yeah, I could not find the month that they started building it with these prisoners. However, the official opening was not until March of 1836, so a year later. The A Hall, also known as Housing Unit 4, which I believe is the last one we were in. That was A Hall.
Yeah, with the trustees.
Yeah,
The one where they had a fly.
with the dungeon and the.
Well, and that was actually the nicest one. They had little rooms with windows,
Yeah, windows.
and it was not as creepy as the rest of it. I actually,
Except for that
me too.
underground part. That
Okay,
was,
the dungeon was bad.
The dungeon was bad. I couldn't do that, but the rest of it was not bad at all.
Yeah, A Hall was the last one that we went to on our tour, and it is very, very old. And it's actually, we couldn't go through a lot of it because it was seriously damaged by a tornado just a few years ago that went through the area. In fact, the first time we tried to do this tour was right after the tornado, and it had been too damaged, and they couldn't do the tour actually for over a year. And then COVID hit, and then it was held off again. So,
yeah, I just saw the memory come up in my timeline the other day of,
something about
somebody posting that, oh, we should do this soon. And then it was like 7 years later that we finally did it.
Yeah, tornado. They did not restore a whole lot of it, but it is safe for people to go into small parts of it. But really, walking in there, the rest of the place had a very heavy, very dark feeling. Walking
wasn't as
there,
bad.
it was almost like being in an empty train station.
On the ground,
That's what it felt
on
like
the
to me.
ground.
Or an empty
Well,
church.
a lot of that is because of the space of it.
But it just felt clean. All of it felt.
Like the energy in there
Yeah,
wasn't
totally.
a bad energy.
They
It
were
was just
happier people.
I wish we could have been in there before the tornado, because
Yeah, I know.
did the wind and the rain and nature wipe it clean for us, or was it always feeling that way because the last people that were in there, this was the
Sunlight can do that.
privilege area to live. You had to be on a waiting list to get in there. They had,
We should probably discuss the buildings in order that we went through.
well,
They might
because
make
it was
things
the first
make more
building
sense.
built, it came
Yeah.
up. But that was the last on it. We can get back to it. I don't really have an order the rest of the buildings that we went to. I don't know what order we went to them in.
we went to Death Row first
Yeah.
because I started crying in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one
was-
was hard. That one was heavy.
Yeah,
Everything
that
about
one's,
that was heavy.
that one's
bad.
the one where we went in the room that you went in and immediately came back out and was like, I don't know if it's my claustrophobia. And then I went in and I don't have a problem with claustrophobia.
Yeah, I couldn't stay in
And
there.
also, as we know, I am ghost repellent.
I wouldn't go in any of the rooms.
And I did not stay in there for more than 30 seconds.
I backed out of that room.
Nope.
And I kept taking pictures. I thought for sure I'm going to see something in here. Not a single picture came out with anything in it, but that room was dark. Didn't like it. So
Yeah.
A Hall, Unit 4, was actually built with a stone quarry on site, and it was built to hold prisoners of war from the Civil War. So that one, which I thought was an interesting start to this particular hall, since it became the place where you wanted to be sent to if you were in there. But it started as a Civil War.
For deserters.
Yeah.
Well, then that doesn't actually make sense.
Oh, maybe it wasn't the first. I'm sorry, but it was built with
It was
stone.
one of the early ones, yeah, but it couldn't have been.
It might have been the biggest.
If the
Oh, I'm so sorry. It is the oldest building still standing.
Still standing.
It was
Okay.
the first built that is still standing. I did misspeak.
Okay, that makes
all of
much
the
more
others
sense.
that were built before
well,
that.
because
Yeah, I was about to
1830s and
quote.
Civil Wars, like no 1830s.
No.
We didn't know there was
Yeah,
going to be a
it's
Civil
about
War.
No, it was
to
the
be
oldest
prisoner.
one. It is the first one built that is still
Okay.
standing. All of the others, and some of them I believe may have been damaged in the riots.
Yes, there's riots.
Yeah, the riots.
Surprise!
So it is the oldest existing building, and it was still used to hold prisoners up until it was closed in 2004. Which we found out on the tour, and they actually had some really interesting stuff in there. But I, guess
still
we'll talk
can't
about
believe
it.
that place was open until 2004.
I know, isn't it mind blowing?
You go in and it looks.
It doesn't look that
Ancient.
modern.
Oh,
Well, the one looked modern, but okay. So in 1885, so we're not that far post Civil War. 1885, 6 shoe factories and a couple other industries decided to cash in on the almost free inmate labor. It was great for the prison, great for the factory owners, and absolutely terrible for local workers. The work in town started to dry up because why would a company hire somebody for an actual living wage when they could pay an inmate almost nothing to do it? And finally, local unions did have to step in and put a
Absolutely,
stop to
still
that.
do that.
Yeah, but the local unions did step in and had to put a stop to that because it was literally killing Jefferson City. People could not find work because everybody just wanted their work done by the inmates because it was free almost. And the
I mean, from a business perspective,
Awesome.
that makes sense. From a human perspective, that sucks on every level.
yeah
From
Well,
a
it's not like they're-
long-term business perspective, it's totally fucking stupid.
Well, yeah. Because if you kill the town you're living in, you're
Yeah.
Well, these
can't
they
do anything.
didn't care. They lived somewhere else.
that's true. That was kind of these factories.
So the unions did step in. They did kind of. Now it's not. I'm not to say that all of the factories were shut down, but they did. They had to cap what they were
Scale
doing there,
back.
It sounded like
Yeah.
so that the town wasn't starving for work while the inmates. And let's face it, you putting the inmates to work and making money off them because the prison was just raking in money during this. It doesn't incentivize the system to not incarcerate people needlessly.
Yeah.
Because heck, well, let's just send them to prison. We're going to put them to work. The
Sounds like
prisons-
modern day
Exactly.
prison.
What happens now,
Money for
especially
us.
with the prison
Our
for
system
profit.
hasn't changed
program.
significantly.
Yes.
No.
Unfortunately,
We have private
these are
prisons
problems
now,
we
and they
still
get
see.
money from the government
It's
for
the
the
same
boarding.
kind of robber baron mentality.
It
That
is. It absolutely is, and we do still
Yep.
see this problem a lot
So
today.
that's-
It's harder to see now today because the prisons being for profit, a lot of them are owned privately, so it's not as obvious that the state is owning
there's not as
this.
much transparency in
And so it
where
makes
the
it
money
harder to see.
goes.
So
and-
unless you know
Yeah.
somebody who's been incarcerated, or if you have family members or are aware of people like that, if you have nothing to do with the system, you probably don't realize how much free labor is being done by prisoners today.
retread tires and
They tried to put a
lights
stop
and-
to it in Jefferson City anyway at that point because
They
it
at
was
least
killing.
slowed it down.
They did. I said I wanted to make a side note here that I'm all for prisoners working and learning new skills, but not at the expense of people leaving the area.
They have to be paid a real
Yeah.
wage.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
They should be
Later, there were
doing
attempts
different
by
type
the
of
prison
labor.
to offer vocational training and educational classes, which I don't think I put it in here, but that was interesting. That was one of the few places that was desegregated in the prison, was the vocational training in the classes. That was one of the few places that black and white were allowed to mix.
That's
At least
interesting.
when they first started doing the training.
Yeah.
They went back to separate housing units. They had separate cafeteria facilities. Everything was separate except for during the vocational training.
Didn't want to set up two
Which is
sets
interesting.
of, two
but,
sets of teachers.
hey, at least there's
and
allowed
stuff.
people
I mean-
to meet and get together and
Yeah.
not perpetuate some of the crap. So in 1887, the Marmaduke House, that is the one that is named for Colonel Darwin W. Marmaduke, and he was the first warden to live there. I can't talk today.
Okay. That's the one that was across the street from our Airbnb?
Yes.
Okay.
The
Yeah,
house,
that's now the museum. I think.
yes.
Yes, I think it was a museum.
And it was that, and also it was. They
Beautiful
also
building.
have some lawyers in there. I can't remember if it's split.
Was there just something shady about how it was built? Wasn't it built with free labor?
Oh yeah. This house sits near the prison and served as the warden's residence until the mid-40s. From the 40s to the 80s, it was still owned by the Department of Corrections and housed families affiliated with the department. It was sold to private citizens in 1991, and they refurbished it, and it's now on the National Registry of Historic Places and stuff.
Okay.
This is a huge house. You're gonna have to look at Marmaduke House if you haven't seen it. It was clearly a Victorian style mansion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is a mansion. It was built with, surprise, surprise, inmate labor, and the total cost of construction with that free labor was only $7,000, which is $220,000 today. A mansion for $220,000
Mm-mm.
because they didn't have to pay a single person who built it, which is fascinating but horrifying. For anyone that's curious, the estimated online price for that building today is $1.75 million.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yep. But in today's dollars, it costs less than $2.25.
It costs less than my house is currently worth.
Yes. A house that has to be 3 or 4 times as large.
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
know it had more property then, too.
Yeah.
It's right on a couple of streets right there now, but, it
Yeah.
had
It had way more property at the time. So we haven't even got to 1900. We're now at 1900. So we started out with 15 inmates in 1835. We are now at a grand total of, whoops, I got to scroll, 2,200.
Mm.
We have ballooned
That
from
didn't take long.
15 to 2,200 in 65 years? 65 years.
Yeah.
1835 to 1900. 65 years. We're up to 2,200 people.
Wow.
Gee, how much of that has to do with the fact that they're free labor?
Mm.
Or were, and they're still getting stuff out of them.
Mm.
Construction of additional facilities, of course, is ongoing.
And of course, how many people were in there for things like larceny?
Yeah, right. Oh, absolutely. In 1911, February 5th, inmates helped save thousands of important documents when the nearby state capitol building caught on fire. That was a nice little sign.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Capitol is really close.
Yeah, it was just down that street.
Because we stayed just down the street from it, just
I don't know, it was
walks.
even a mile away.
Yeah, we stood there at our Airbnb and we could turn one direction and take pictures of the Capitol and turn the other direction and take pictures of the prison walls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in 1935, the inmate population, so another 35 years, half that time, was now up to 5,300.
Whoa.
More than
So
double.
half the time,
Accelerating.
more than doubled. So they're just, I mean, and can you
And a lot of
see
those
how
people
this
would-
is working?
and a
This
lot
is
of
why
those
the
people
US
would have
has
been in there.
25% of the in-prison population at the entire
Well, in
time.
35, in the middle of the Depression.
Yeah, we had 5,300 people were now incarcerated
Mm.
in this place. So of course they have to keep building. And now we're going to get to kind of where we started out with
their
our
own rock
tour.
and using their own free labor, so it's not that expensive.
Right. We're going to get to kind of where we started. So in 1937, the gas chamber was built. The gas chamber
that
itself
was
was
awful.
delivered and installed on a slab, and the building was built around it using inmate labor. And I'm sorry, that is the most morbid thing I've
building
ever
your own
heard.
gas chamber. Oh.
Can you imagine being on that details? Like, you are going to be building the building that people you know here are going to die in.
Well, to be fair, after being in the death row building, I think the gas chamber would be a relief.
Probably.
Yeah.
So this is actually
That was
kind of where
for
we started.
Yeah.
was designed.
So we have the death row building. So this is probably a good place to start discussing that first building that we went into. I don't remember what number it was, what they called
I
it.
can't remember.
I'm
Like
gonna let
it
you
was like
guys
A,
talk
B,
while I
C, and D. Everything was like
If
that.
I was looking at a map of it,
Right, it's from that back, that main entrance. It was kind of straight back, into the right.
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Well, I mean, we should probably start with just kind of the whole. They do set it up well, the tour well. You come into the main building, which is kind of made into a museum, sort of. It's a beautiful, huge stone facade on the outside. Lots of like gargoyles, and it's very ornate. Actually,
Stonework is actually
Yeah.
really nice.
It was gorgeous out there. And then you come in, and the tour doesn't start until like 11:30 at night. So they're really setting the atmosphere up, and we're going to like 2:30 in the morning. Like, was it 11 to 2, 11:30 to 2:30? I can't remember. It was really, so they're setting the atmosphere up because you're already kind of tired. And
it might have been close to 3 by the time we got back.
maybe it was 12 to 3. I can't remember.
No, we started before.
No, it was 11.
We started
Okay.
before midnight, but
11 or 11.
But then there was the whole thing of then we drive
Oh,
over
that's
to
true,
the gas
over to
chamber
the gas
and
chamber,
then come
right.
back. So yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
but
So
yeah,
you
that
go
first
in,
building.
you go through the building, and then from there you go out the back of that building into the main courtyard, which is very poorly lit. I'm sure partially on purpose and partially just because it's not a functioning facility anymore.
Yeah, they're not going to
The
spend
lights.
the electricity on
When
it.
you took pictures, the lights
It's all
were
turned
green.
green. They didn't look green in person, but on the cameras they always turned green. It was really kind of weird. So it was very atmospheric to start. But then we're walking through these grounds in the dark, and it's creepy, it's eerie, and everything's fine. And then, at least for me, we then turn into the building that housed Death Row and a whole bunch of other inmates. And that was where it's like, it kind of hits you, like, how poorly these human beings were treated.
It's a
like-
warehouse of misery.
It is. It's like when you think about puppy mills, or now that I know about ferret mills, it was like that. This is how human beings were being treated. So at that point, I don't know how much of it was the eerie atmosphere, how much of it was the realization about how actually awful this was. It kind of got all
and the
mixed
knowledge
up.
of how many people they were cramming into one of these little cells.
Oh, those tiny, tiny rooms that are like, yeah, there'd be 4 people in here. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's smaller than my office.
There were
It's just
some of
for
them
me.
that had
Well,
6 or 7 in
8.
it. Yeah.
And it's
4
like,
was kind of the minimum.
Yeah.
It's like the size of your bathroom.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was just very depressing. The whole
It
thing was
was.
depressing.
Size
It
of
was-
a not very, very large bathroom. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
You were
yeah.
there was
literally
room
in a
for
cage.
basically stacked bunks and a small aisle between it with a toilet that was built into the wall.
So
Yeah,
some
yeah.
of these prisons, when they're overcrowded, they fill the bunks and then they start putting people on the floor.
Yeah.
Today they do that. Here in
Yeah.
Benton County, they do it.
Wow.
I'm sure that's exactly what happened in there. There's no way.
The way they were cramming that many people in there, yeah, you can only
Without-
stack the roof. The ceiling's only so
Right.
high. You can't stack
It's
much
very,
more than
very
3 beds
short.
in there on each side.
So the architecture's amazing, but the use of the place is awful. I mean, this would be a prime place for, if human misery creates spirits, that this is a
Yeah.
prime
Well,
place for
and
it.
you know that article in the '60s called it one of the one of the most brutal places in the country.
I do have that, yes.
You know,
The bloodiest 47 acres in
Right.
America.
It was definitely believable.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, and you could just feel it going in there. Just everything. It just felt so heavy, so
Of course, all the lights are off and everything, but I think even walking in on a bright lit day, it would have been. There's no windows in these cells. There's nothing. I think it still would have.
No, the only time we were feeling
awful.
air is when you would then realize that you were near a broken window from the tornado.
Mhm.
That was not really
Right.
feeling air.
yeah.
So when we first walked in, they actually had the lights on, remember?
They
and they
did.
said, we're going to give you a few minutes, and then we're going to turn the lights out. And then they kind of led us to the stairs so we could go downstairs, or we could walk around that first floor, or go upstairs.
Yeah.
And so
Well,
the upstairs...
They kept us downstairs at first, and then said, or like on the ground floor and the below, and then we went up.
Yeah, we switched with another group.
Yeah.
So that they didn't have, however many people it was on the
Yeah.
tour in there all
Yeah,
at
that's
once.
something too.
60-something people.
They did split the groups up so they weren't too huge.
Which was good.
Which ours was pretty big anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We still ended up with, I'd
Yeah.
say 20 people.
So
15, 20.
I think they counted us out into groups of like 12 to 15 people.
It was
Based on, who had however many people in there.
I would say
Party.
the first building that we went to was for death row and also probably the more violent criminals, because it was definitely more of a cage type atmosphere. So,
Well,
Where-
especially death row being subterranean.
Yes.
but even the top one was
Yeah.
literally
It was literally
wire, and it was
Oh, yeah,
literally
yeah.
cages, like a dog
Yeah,
pen.
it was like all of the stuff was in the middle, and then they had around the outside is where the guards and stuff were. But yeah, everything else was just
Wire
pinned into the
walls.
middle, and just a box and a box and a box and a box.
Right.
Everything was in a box.
Yeah.
And it was very much like those movies that you see of prison. It was not very different. It was
No.
very
No.
very
Pretty
realistic.
accurate.
Yeah, it was very accurate, and it was like these little catwalks. When you went upstairs, it was like these little catwalks you walk on, and there's like the cells, like on one side. On the other side, there's like a rail, and then it's all fenced in, so you don't fall over, people don't jump or push other people or whatever.
Yeah.
It's
And
definitely
so
flawed.
you're like walking inside this inner cage just to walk to check on the prisoners.
Yeah. So it's like 4 boxes. You're like 4 levels deep in a box by the
Yeah.
time you get into a cell, and it's like.
Nesting dolls.
Yeah, I was uncomfortable the entire time in this building.
Mhm.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about what happened down on
Yeah,
death
it
row
was-
when we were down there?
Yeah, you guys need to talk about the apology tour. I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, well, we went down there. Teresa and I went down. Teresa and Kelly went down. And there had been several groups down there at that point. Some of them had like a spirit box, that as supposedly as a spirit gets close, it'll go off. It'll make light and sound. And they said that earlier they'd been down there and had been really active. They'd gotten a whole lot of hits off of it. But Teresa and I were down there and in the dark, and it was just like, we just said, you know what? We're really sorry you were treated like this. You didn't deserve it. I don't know what you did, but you didn't deserve it. And we just said, we're sorry.
and started
Go cry.
crying.
Yeah, we
Yeah, I'm
did.
gonna cry too.
They said we were sorry. And it was more to make us feel better probably than anything else, but the people at the spirit box came back down. They could
Yeah.
not get a single
Kathy and I.
Yeah.
About
and
that
then
time
Kathy
too.
showed up about then.
Yeah,
Not
well-
a single beep.
Well, they
Yeah,
were getting the beeps
but
before we did.
Is that
Remember?
because they went away or because I'm ghost repellent?
Well,
That's true.
But
No,
Yeah,
nothing.
we
But with
should
the air down
state
there, it
that
did not
this is
feel as
Kathy,
heavy.
and I am apparently ghost repellent. I cannot think of a single episode in my entire 48 years that really qualifies as any sort of paranormal.
man, we should have left you
Happening.
overnight in the 13th Street house after I moved out.
Oh yeah, 'cause that
Yeah.
was super creepy.
I mean,
You would have seen something then.
I know crazy shit happened. Like, I don't disbelieve in it. It just never happens to me. So, you gotta take anything I say with a grain of salt because I'm apparently totally blocked from any of that.
Yeah, but they weren't getting anything when we came in. They were sitting there when we came in saying, "Oh yeah, it was so active just a few minutes ago."
And then already,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah,
they
it
would
was.
have to walk up to it and it would kind of beep and then they'd back off and then nothing.
Well, and it was interesting because Kelly and I went down there, and it was so heavy, and both of us were we felt it. We
felt
felt
bad.
this horrible place and what these people went through, and as she said, no matter what they had done in their lives, they still didn't deserve that.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, there are very few people that deserve that kind of treatment. There've been a few monsters, but I don't think there were any in there.
I don't think most people in there deserved that. And then remember the whole feather that we found down there too? It's like how you find a feather in a weird place where there's a spirit.
Forgot about the feather.
And so we found a feather, which was really odd, I thought, to be down in a basement.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we hadn't seen any sign of birds having got in, really.
Yeah, there was some broken windows and stuff from the
But we hadn't found
tornado.
feathers anywhere else upstairs where the birds would have got in.
But it was, to me, it was odd that it was in the
very
basement part
weird.
versus upstairs or something.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I thought that was a very interesting thing. And they had a picture, and you can see the picture too if you go to the website for the penitentiary, for the history part, that they had on the wall showing some of the people that were inmates there on death row.
Mm-hmm.
And unsurprisingly, much like today, it's very heavily skewed towards black men.
yeah.
There was one woman, and I believe that they talked about her at the gas chamber, how she and her partner in crime were gassed
Yeah,
together.
her husband, I think.
I can't remember if it was her husband or boyfriend.
Yeah, they
or
had
whatever.
kidnapped and killed a child.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And they were
they
gassed together.
kidnapped
She was the
And
only
then,
woman on there.
and then asked for ransom.
Yeah, but most of them, when you read the thing and it says, what happened, most of them had killed somebody, like trying to rob a store.
Right.
It's
Kind
like-
of by
probably-
accident.
Yeah,
almost.
like they were
That wasn't
desperate
the
and trying to
intention.
steal
Yeah.
something.
We're not talking about murder one, guys.
Yeah.
These were not people who went out.
Not
and
necessarily,
serial
not
killers.
necessarily manslaughter.
But there was
But
an interesting person.
Not murder
there.
one. Except
The
that
mobster.
Oh, the
That was
mobster
the other
was
building.
interesting.
Yes,
That was the other
different
building. That was the next building.
Yes, we'll talk
Yeah.
about him.
So,
He was an interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting.
let's go ahead and talk about the riot, and then we'll go to the second building that we went to now.
Yeah.
In 1938, they did build a hospital facility there on site. I believe they could take care of like 200 inmates or something at a time.
Wow.
Which, hey, they probably needed it by then. But in September 22nd, so coming up on an anniversary of it here, since we were sitting here on September 1st, 1954 was the riot. And it began when 2 inmates feigned illness and succeeded in overpowering the guards and stealing their keys. They started a chain of events that led to 4 inmate deaths and over 50 inmate injuries. 1 attempted suicide and 4 police personnel were injured.
Oof.
Which, considering the number of people who rioted, I actually find those numbers shockingly low. 4 buildings were completely destroyed, and I believe that's for some of the older ones.
Yeah, probably so.
4 of them were completely destroyed, and total cost of damages exceeded $5 million, which is over $55 million today.
Wow.
So what was the prison population at that point?
Let me see here. I
We were
had
up to,
it. We were up over 5,300.
yeah.
That's about
There
10%
was,
of the
at
population.
one point, they said that, let me see here, I have some notes. I believe I have more notes here on, I thought I had more notes on that event. I didn't. I moved it up here. There were like 2,200 of them loose, out of their cells, loose in the facility at one point overnight. So what happened is this happened and the guys stole the keys and they started unlocking cells. They were actually targeting somebody. They had somebody in mind that they were going to target to attack. And basically they were just creating chaos to do that.
So they weren't necessarily trying to escape
the
so
more
much
that-
as...
But the more that got out, more were let out, and it just kind of spiraled and everything. They locked it down pretty quick. They weren't able. Nobody got out of the prison facility itself. They called in all the state troopers, all the cops, everybody in the area. There was like a story about a guy who was a state trooper and he was eating his dinner on site, like at a diner, like 30 minutes away, and he had to come in. And so they ended up with like 175, I think. Where's that number? I don't see it right now. It was like 175 police. But basically, nobody wanted to go in there.
I don't blame them.
So what they did is they basically let them rage themselves out overnight, and at 7 the next morning, they went in and started trying to.
What about the
Did
prison
they get their
guards?
targets? Whoever was targeted, did they get?
You know what? I did not see. I do believe that they might be at
part of
least
the
some of the
casualties.
injuries, if not some of the casualties.
Yeah.
They
I would
waited
bet the
until
guards
dawn
that were in there
and went
retreated
in.
as far as they could and found a place to hunker down. I mean, otherwise there would have been way more of them dead.
Yeah, and what they did is that the next morning, as they went in, pretty much around dawn, they'd pretty much been rioting all night, and they sent in like 24 of them, and everybody else stayed outside to make sure nobody broke through. And they went into one building, and they're like, we have more guns than you do, we have more weapons than you do. You either get in close to cell to you right this second, or you get shot and you die. The first guy resisted. They shot him, killed him. Everybody went, "Ooh,
I don't want to die.
oh, they're serious," and put themselves away, and that basically ended it.
Wow.
An interesting note, though, is that, and it makes me wonder, almost all witnesses say that almost none of the African-American inmates participated in the riot. They kept to themselves.
Mm.
Was that because they were treated so badly before they knew the guards were going to be serious and were going to kill them?
Probably.
Or were they not targeted and therefore weren't let free? Or
Some of them were free. They stayed in their cells. They did not.
Well,
participate in the riot.
remember in the one
I think that
building.
their punishment would have been more if they had participated.
Remember,
yeah,
they had
definitely.
actually a
This is
whipping
the
post
50s.
for
They
the
did.
African Americans.
This
So
is the 50s. They
Yeah.
knew.
See, I think that
What
that's
would
what it
get
was.
done
Is
to
they
them.
knew that once the riot was over,
Like
that they would be treated harsher. So it was nearly exclusively white men rioting, which is probably why there were so few casualties, because they didn't shoot and kill all of them. They only shot one, and that definitely convinced, at least at that time,
It's like,
convinced
oh,
them.
okay.
Yep, that convinced them that they were serious and they weren't bluffing, and they put themselves back in.
Time to quit being macho
But
assholes.
it
and go back.
took days to get everything sorted, and of course, so many buildings
people
were on
put in the
fire,
right
and you know, like,
places
they
and-
couldn't even put everybody back in their cells. Some of the buildings were destroyed.
Yeah.
yeah.
So this was a huge event in the facility's life.
It becomes
It
even
was
more
just
overcrowded
the riot.
because they don't have
Right, they had to
the
rebuild
spaces
stuff,
to put them
and
into.
it was a disaster. It was horrible. Now, of course, some of them. People try to put a spin on it, say, "Oh, the people that were protesting the bad food and the bad conditions." I'm like, I'm sure some of them were, but the very initial plot was to get to somebody and kill them.
Well, they
It
got a
was
little bit of
essentially
freedom
a
and they took
revenge
it.
plot. And they're like, "Oh no, really? It was because of the bad conditions. Yeah, your conditions were bad, but that ain't why they did it."
Yeah.
Yeah.
But hey,
Then once you let everybody else out, well, then they do whatever they want to do about whatever they're pissed about.
Well, it's just a crowd mentality, and they just
Yeah,
everybody
we're
goes
with
with
it.
it.
So in 1967, that's when Time magazine named it the bloodiest 47 acres in America.
Yeah.
It was after the riot, but significantly, it was still, because they still had death row. This was not a good place. This place was absolutely rife with problems and overcrowded, absolutely overcrowded. So let's talk about the second building then that we went to.
the one that used to be the women's
Well,
unit at one point.
that's where she confused us.
Yeah.
It was briefly a women's unit. There was,
Oh, yeah. And then started talking about the mobster.
She
Like,
said
well,
he-
what was the mobster
Yeah,
doing?
in the
the
women's
mobster
unit.
guy doing in the. Oh, well, no, that was when it was.
right,
Yeah.
because they were like briefly they would try to put women in there, and then they'd be like, we need more facilities, and so they'd let them out or they'd send them somewhere else. And I have some notable people. The first official inmate, by the way, was Wilson Edison. That was in 1836. First female inmate was Amelia Eddy in 1842, but she didn't last long because they didn't have facilities to keep her separate. So
Yeah.
most women that they put in there, they would realize pretty quick, this is not going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not going to make
They
it.
have to be kept somewhere separate or.
So they did briefly have a facility that they used for women, and we thought that was very interesting history. They were telling us that story, and then they sidestepped to the mobster who basically had a penthouse.
Yeah, took over the penthouse at the top of this.
I've had
particular
apartments
building.
smaller than that.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Me
It
too.
actually wasn't bad. You had a really nice view.
It was a nice space. The space felt good.
Yeah.
and windows
Two
and
rooms.
Two
Yeah.
rooms.
yeah.
It was nice.
I had never heard of the dude, and I don't remember his name.
I don't either.
I got nothing.
I had never heard of him, but I was like, he must have been
But
somebody at the time.
he bargained somehow to get this penthouse suite up there all to himself.
Essentially never left it.
Yeah.
So I don't really remember a whole lot
Oh,
about
I
this
wouldn't.
one, except that when we went upstairs, there were like some wooden posts, and then there had like some little information about being built by the prisoners, like little plaques.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is
Listen.
the one that had the cattle streak entry that I hated. Sorry, I'm eating. This is one that had that all the grapes and everything that people would just
Yeah.
run through their cattle chutes,
Yeah.
and I don't know what about it. I wanted to just leave the whole fucking facility at that point.
Yeah, that's how I was with the death row. Yeah, you know,
Oh, pardon me. I said
I'll
Right.
try to edit out. I've heard a couple of words, so I'll try to edit them out.
the it was just like, because the guards would be standing above you on grates and looking down on you, and through grates looking down on you, and everything was segmented with grates, and you were literally forced through like cattle.
Yeah. And yeah, it's kind of like, you know.
And the stairs didn't really go anywhere if you didn't have keys.
In a maze.
Yeah, the stairs were weird.
Because we went up a bunch of stairs and it was like, oh, we're stuck.
Where does it go? That's where I saw little plaques where this was made by prisoners or whatever.
Yeah, I did not like that building.
Obviously, they had woodworking and didn't they build furniture as well?
Yeah, there was the railings.
Yeah, they did the vocational stuff and everything there, so they were able to use a lot of the stuff that they were teaching people how to make and how to build and create in that one. That building.
But yeah.
It was an odd building.
Yeah, everything about it felt chaotic.
Yeah.
You could just feel what it must have felt like to be packed in there with armed guards standing there staring down at you from right over your head. The grates were low. I mean, I'm short.
Yeah.
I'm 5'2".
And you could reach
and you could feel like it was just like right there. It's like, how did a 6 foot tall man feel shackled and shuffling, inches behind the guy in front of him with somebody packed behind him with a guard standing literally inches above the top of his head?
Yeah.
I'll be honest,
he probably couldn't have stood up.
That building didn't really bother me as much. Like, it wasn't a happy place, but I really don't remember
that. Didn't bother me. That part bothered me.
Yeah.
I could just feel how horrible it must have been to be. Yeah. That intake part was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's where the window was broke. That I kept feeling the breeze, and it took me a minute to figure out there was a broken window. Is that the one where the guard was standing down somewhere? And he downstairs, and he said he was seeing one of the leaners, and I was like,
yeah.
That was definitely
yeah, that was creepy. Yeah, I was like, I don't see a leaner.
Yeah, he kept swearing he was seeing one lean out from the end of the hall and look at him, but I wasn't seeing anything.
Yeah, I did feel safer with him with us.
Yeah. One of the people that was with us was actually like an off-duty police officer.
Yeah.
Sheriff's department or something.
No, he was off duty.
But
he said something made me think this is a side gig.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's not an official gig.
There's various ways that sheriff's deputies and other officers can get. Because I mean, that's who used to take us to the bank with the money when I was in the cash office. On the weekends, there wasn't an armored car available, and so it was sheriff's deputies that would take us. And they got paid for it. Overtime because they were doing it on their days off.
Remember, don't shut yourself in your cell. How much did it cost to get you out?
Oh, it's like $800 or something.
And it could take hours.
And take the rest of the night.
Yeah, hours.
Yes. Yeah. That was one of the things.
Do not go into a cell and close the door behind you thinking that you are funny. You are not funny. You are going to be stuck there.
Yeah. So they told us that when we went in, and actually my friend told me this too because she had toured before us. And she said that there was people that had actually gone in, they shut the door, and there's only a limited number of keys to open them. So, finding the right key for a door, they can't be opened. They don't have
keys for everything anymore.
So you're at the mercy of a locksmith, and when the locksmith can get there, and then you have to pay the bill. So they were like, do not shut the door. Which there was no fear of that with me because I wouldn't even go in a cell.
I never went in.
I can definitely see some of the people on our tour.
Oh, they would have been told you.
Oh, yeah.
The ones taking laughing selfies in the gas chamber chairs. Yeah, those are the idiots that would have, to be funny, gone in.
We did have some people
if they hadn't been so thoroughly
warned.
Stability.
Yeah, there was quite a few of them, too.
I love morbid stuff. I love spooky stuff.
Taking a laughing selfie
in a gas chamber.
In a gas chamber chair.
Though, if we want to talk about the gas chamber, that was technically the very last thing. Do you want to save it for the last one?
Yeah, let's save it.
Save it for last.
It was last.
So, the second one, I absolutely freaked out in that middle section, but the rest of it I was okay with.
Yeah.
I mean, as okay as you can be with something that was clearly...
Like when I went back to work and somebody said, oh, how was it? Oh, we had fun. Okay, well, maybe not fun. Exactly.
It was very interesting. It was very educational. The whole trip was very educational.
It was.
I wish they had actually given us more of this history while we were on the tour. I really wish they had. But there is a separate history tour. So you could technically do the history tour earlier in the day and then do the ghost tour at night.
Yeah, I kind of want to go back to look at the museum in the warden's house and,
And go to the state capitol.
Yes, see the state capitol, which is also supposedly haunted.
Just not a big surprise.
Apparently, had
Well, I
a
guess we
fire
can
or something.
announce our plans for the Capitals and Ghosts tour that we want to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Go to all the state capitals.
Since most capitals seem to have ghost stories, so that makes sense.
Yeah, they're usually old.
Yep. And usually have a lot of weird backstabbing politics, so
Mm-hmm.
literal backstabbing sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Poor Julius Caesar. Yeah, I saw a funny meme about Julius Caesar. It's like, Julius Caesar, last time everybody did their part in a group project, and the line under it was, yeah, except that he was only stabbed 25 times, and there were like 50 people who were supposed to do it. Aha! An actual group project.
Yeah.
Anyway, side note.
So the project got done, but not because everybody was pulling their weight.
Exactly. So 1989, that was when death row was closed at this facility.
Oh,
The remaining inmates awaiting execution moved to the new facility at Potosi, which is a little bit closer to St. Louis. It's a little south of St. Louis. It's about 2 hours from Jeff City.
So did they completely close that building?
I don't believe that they did.
Or they
just
just-
removed the death row inmates.
Okay.
So they wouldn't have had
Just that bottom
anything
floor.
else.
So the gas chamber wasn't used past 1989?
No, it was not. And in 1991, it became the Jefferson City Correctional Facility. Potosi kind of took over as the state penitentiary, is what I'm understanding.
So basically it was like for less of a high risk.
Right. It became a less secure
It wasn't the
type facility.
Supermax anymore.
Right. It's not where all the really bad people went anymore.
Right.
But it was still open, and that's 1991. I didn't graduate high school until 92. Dave was still until 92.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty recent. Don't count the years. And on September 15th, 2004, the final 1,335 inmates were moved to another facility east of town. They were not moved to Potosi. They were taken somewhere else. And the Missouri State Penitentiary was officially closed. So once again, coming up on the anniversary, September 1st, that was September 15th on 2004.
Wow.
18 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
18 years ago. We work with people who were barely alive.
Imagine
When this
all. Another thing that bothered me was all the germs in there. Imagine, because it's not the cleanliest of places.
And you're crammed in.
Imagine all those years
no
of germs
way to
in
be
there.
Clean in there.
That was one of the other things I had a
Those
hard time
open
with.
toilets?
Yeah.
Open toilets.
They still have open toilets in jails.
Yeah, but just think about the germs coming from that.
Yeah.
It was horrible. So that's basically the end of the history part of it. It was closed in 2004. It is now basically treated as a tourist attraction. And it does still have the walls. It still has most of the buildings. We only saw 3 or 4 buildings. 4 buildings. If you count the first one.
Yeah.
What was that thing upstairs? We went upstairs there near where we started. What was that? Because remember that other group that got locked in there?
Yeah, so when we first walked in and we walked out to the courtyard, there was an upstairs, but we didn't go up there, did we?
We did go up there, but it was later.
That
Oh,
was
yeah.
the women's.
Oh, yeah. That was the
Yeah.
women's.
Oh, was that part of the women's part? Okay.
Yeah, because we had to go up and over something, and we just
I just remember that other
cobbled
tour
together
group.
series
Somebody
of
thought they were cute and had locked the door. So luckily they did have a key for that one.
There's
Yeah.
always one in the crowd.
There's always at least one. I think there were 3, maybe 4 groups.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
So-
split us up into 4. I think.
So out of give or take 60, 70 people, there's at least one jerk.
Mm-hmm.
Guaranteed.
So here's some people before we go to the to the gas chamber part of it. So some famous people. That first was Wilson Edison, 1836, first official inmate. Obviously the 15 before him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was the official one in 1836.
Okay.
The first female inmate was Amelia Eddy in 1842. She did not last long there. She had to be transferred. Charles Arthur, Pretty Boy Floyd, he arrived in 1925.
Uh-huh.
Sonny Liston was in 1950, and that is actually where he started
Boxing.
started boxing, and then he went on to then
Yeah,
become
they
the
had a
national
sign
heavyweight.
up about him.
Yeah, he became the national heavyweight boxing champion. He was actually in that facility. And the infamous James Earl Ray in 1959. He was incarcerated there until his movie-worthy escape in 1967. He actually did then remain free until he assassinated Martin Luther King. So he actually did escape from that facility in 1967 and was free for, I think it was about a year, maybe just over a year when he assassinated has to be a Martin Luther King Jr. Which, ironically, when I was reading on this, he was actually surprised at the reaction that he got, and that he became a hunted and wanted man after that.
He
thought that,
He thought he was going to be a hero.
He was basically doing the world a favor, and everybody was going to be happy that he had done it. So that tells you where his head was.
Yeah.
Well, that tells you all you really need to know about racists in general.
Yes, that he actually was surprised at the extreme.
But I'm doing the right thing.
On the actual site, I do have a list of links and stuff that I used for some of this research.
Yeah.
Including, I actually did use a Wikipedia page to help with the timeline part of it.
It's okay. We're not like serious.
We're not doing
researchers.
scholarly research. I did, of course, the penitentiary tours page from the official site. There was the official data.org, what I used for the money to figure the money. And then also there is a page then, jeffersoncitymag.com, which has stuff about the Marmaduke House. Which the Marmaduke House blew my mind, and then when we looked it up and found out that it cost only $7,000 to build. It just tells you how much labor is factored into. Yeah, how much what percentage of your home cost
How much of it was
labor.
How much of
Oh
it
yeah.
even then was just the labor.
Yeah, so that was very interesting. So, do we want to talk about the costume then? That was our last stop.
Well, we
actually had
had
to stop and
well
go
then,
out.
actually, right before that, after the women's, we went into then the first building.
Oh
we
yeah,
actually
A Hall.
talked
We
about,
went into A Hall.
which was the most humane of them. I mean, it's literally the rooms.
If you didn't go
they had
into the
fewer
basement.
people,
Until
they
you
had
got
windows.
downstairs to the little part
And yeah,
that
until you go
was
down to the showers,
dungeon.
and then you go behind the showers, and that's where they kept people in solitary.
It was basically a crawl space, is what it was. It was damp. It was
I couldn't
cold.
go into those rooms.
And
I
the,
went into one or two of them.
Completely dark.
and the cell's doors were like
Pictures.
solid metal doors. They did not have bars. They did not have
They were
windows.
completely corroded.
And they had no lights
It
down
looked
there
like
at all.
it looked like a haunted house in there.
Yeah, it looked like a cellar
It
with
looked like
cells.
a medieval dungeon. I mean,
it didn't help that I had my red
there were some,
light.
I mean,
on
there
my
were some
flashlight.
electrical wires running around to make it clear that it wasn't actually medieval. But
It was almost like a
That was
cave.
the only way you could tell it wasn't.
yes, exactly.
It was.
looked
I
like
did
a
not
cave.
like that.
No.
The shower room was a little creepy, but that dungeon area, and they did call it the dungeon.
I believe the shower room is where the whipping.
Yeah,
Yes.
so you guys stayed in
Yeah.
the dungeon. I could not stay in the dungeon. It actually made me feel sick. So
I
I,
was-
left
Yeah.
you guys.
No, I noticed.
I had that weird
left
tight
it
feeling in
over
my
outside.
chest when I was in there.
Actually, I guess I
Kinda
was
like
burned out
a-
at that point.
Almost like heartburn, but not quite.
I was just going
Yeah.
around like.
I didn't want to see. I saw enough of
Would've
it. I
got
didn't want to
super
see it.
close
So I
up.
went and sat all by myself in the shower. There was
Yeah.
nobody around.
Yeah, we realized you were gone. I was like,
And I
Where is she?
started getting a little
Well, we can't
scared.
have lost her because there's not enough room back here to lose anybody.
But it wasn't really scary. It was actually fine. It was kind of peaceful in a way. But
yeah, the rest of the building, though, like upstairs, they had those giant old projectors. They did movie nights. They had game nights. They
Well, the
had
projectors were
access to
Yeah, they
you know,
were.
more activities.
Well, and you
They
had
had
that
fewer people
high
in each
cell
cell.
in the
Yeah,
center of it. So
people.
it was
Huge
the
arch
only
ceiling.
place in this entire facility where you saw that kind of unobstructed space.
it was almost like a barn, and it was 2 stories. And it was
Yeah.
like
It was very
you
much like the
walk.
arch of a church nave.
Yeah.
Or a train station, or yeah.
So you walk in, and it's like you have cells on the left, cells on the right, and then the big open space, which was the
2
common
stories.
area. Yeah, it was 2 stories.
2 or 3.
Real,
maybe 3.
maybe we couldn't go upstairs because of the damage.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember.
But then when you go into the cells, they had windows, and some of them had things like curtains hanging on them, and they were personalized by these people, and they weren't just bare
And
cells.
they said that there were fewer people. Like I think it was like 2 or 3 instead of 6 to 8. or
They were
something.
almost
Yeah.
like a little home, and they weren't.
There was a waiting list for that. You had to be on very good behavior to
Then
get
you had
a
to
space
apply.
Which
there.
you
But
know,
hey,
you're.
if somebody might be tempted, like, oh, I'm gonna go screw up, mess with this person and start a fight, and it's like, but I'm on the
I
waiting list
really
for
want
A
this.
Hall. I'd be like,
Or like, no, I'm in a hall.
But
I'm staying
here's-
here.
Here's the problem with that. You're already pulled away from your family your whole life. Everything you worked for is gone because how are you going to maintain that while you're in jail?
right.
And then they want to throw you in a cell that's horrible. And then, when your time is up, 5-6 years, they expect you to come out and be a productive citizen.
Right.
How is that possible?
When you've been through
It's
all
never
of that.
been possible.
So
No.
yeah, so that's the whole problem with that.
Well, But you think about the word penitentiary. They do it on purpose.
Well, remember when it was first built, they were all kept in solitary, and they were not even allowed to speak to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Those original inmates were kept in solitary and were not allowed to speak.
This is one.
Which somehow they thought that was going to help them be penitent to reform.
This is one of the
we all
things
know that is
we
a way to
get
break a person away.
from the Puritans.
Yeah.
And
research has
not that they're the
definitely
only
proved
ones,
that you
but
can't do that.
no, penitent.
It was also something that was
they
done
were-
in England at the time.
When we started with the prison system in this country, nobody was thinking, oh, these people are, we need to treat them well so that they come out and become productive. They wanted to punish people.
And it was usually more short term, too.
Yeah.
They weren't in there for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 life.
Yeah.
This was
But even if they
you're
were-
a debtor or you're something like that, and you're in there
debtor's
for a
prison is
number
one
of
of the
months.
stupidest ideas ever, but whatever.
I know.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's
Yeah, how are you going to pay that off? You're not working.
There are some people that definitely deserve that, to be in jail, not to be.
Oh, absolutely.
The
I
things that we
listen to
saw.
True Crime podcasts. There are some people who are truly evil and never deserve to be out.
Well, like that couple that we
But
were talking about.
reading the stories on the death row site, you can see the stories
Most
and the
of those
pictures and
guys
what was on
did
that
not-
wall. It's like a murder during a robbery. That's awful. It is
Yeah.
awful. But it was not planned. They did not do it out of evil. They did not do it because they were terrible people.
Mm-hmm.
They were in a bad spot. They made some bad decisions.
But they didn't deserve to be stuck in a hole
In
and
the
then
ground and then
executed.
And treated like an animal.
And absolutely, animals are treated better.
Yeah, I was gonna say we treat animals better than that.
Especially
It would
now.
be on
even
you if you
then,
treated
yeah.
an animal like that.
You would be going to jail if you treated an animal like that.
Yeah.
That's just a funny
Which-
story, right?
That's just where you end up. Yeah. No, it was very eye-opening. I mean, I think
Well, if
several
you
of
treat
us...
an animal that badly, you kind of deserve that.
Yeah, not to go into any detail, but several of us
True.
are
For a few
aware
months, at least.
of conditions in the American prison system and how our quote-unquote justice system works. And to see the inside of it like that, walking it like they would was...
It was weird.
It was weird.
Yeah.
I went for the spooks, but it became a completely different experience for me.
It did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
There was something nice that we saw though. Do you guys remember when we were leaving and we walked out and we saw the
All the bats.
we saw all the
Love
bats and the
that.
shooting stars. There was a meteor
Yes,
shower.
There was a meteor
That
shower.
was very nice.
So it was completely dark there. There's not hardly any lights. There's like one out towards the front. And so
Yeah.
we see all these beautiful bats flying around and these shooting stars, and it was really nice.
It was
That was
super
really
cool.
pretty. So that was kind of a
good
nice
end
ending.
too, because after that, then we went and actually
You
saw
have to go
the
get
gas
in your
chamber.
car and drive around the corner.
Which, once again, walking distance, but we're downtown Jefferson City. We don't
At
know.
2 in the
where-
morning, middle of the night,
Yeah.
you're driving. Yeah.
And the
In a kind of
off-duty police
slightly
officer was
sketchy
kinda
area.
like, we weren't as bad an area because one lady had told the police officer. I heard one.
Oh, yeah,
about
we're
it.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
staying, and he was like,
Like, oh,
I
Yeah.
wouldn't go there. And we're talking
No.
6'4" armed police officer saying,
Yeah.
no, you should not do that.
And he said, yeah, I'm going about 3 blocks that away. And he pointed right to where we were going.
Yeah.
So
That's
the
where
police
we
officer
are.
at least lived where we were staying. And we stayed in a beautiful old Victorian. Kelly found an Airbnb
Yeah.
Victorian.
That place was
amazing.
awesome.
Oh, it was. Parker
Yeah.
House, I believe, was the name. Look it up.
It
Yeah,
was
it was
actually
amazing.
amazing.
It
Yeah.
was the neatest old building.
Literally catty corner from
From the
one of the
prison.
corners of the prison.
And we
So
took so many
there.
pictures of it.
So we stayed on the road, the road behind the state capitol building. So as we were pulling up to our Airbnb, there was like lots of law offices. They
Mm-hmm.
made a lot of these old homes into law offices and things like that.
Yeah.
So it was
It's
more.
gentrified.
Yeah, it was gentrified.
We
It was
still
nice.
want to walk around as a group of women at 3 in the morning in an
Yeah.
area we don't know. That still
Right.
didn't feel very safe.
No, definitely not safe.
Yeah.
We were going to
So
attract
we
attention.
met some people on the street the next morning taking pictures that were quite nice. That
Yes.
woman with her dogs. and-
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we met some. We ran into some
Yeah.
nice people.
Yeah.
But so we did have to drive to the gas chamber.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mostly probably for safety that they
Which was
recommended.
in a
And at 3 in the morning, we didn't want to
state
walk that far.
vehicle parking lot.
Yeah. So we.
Yeah,
Yeah.
an active parking lot.
Yeah. With all these. We were like, where are all these cars here? Where are all these people?
And there was like
Police
motor
officers,
pool
oh, it's like medical
and
stuff for state
Yeah.
employees.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, it's state motor pool stuff. So you're going into their parking lot. It was very
That was
strange.
very weird.
Hey, at least they were
And then you get out
utilizing
and they
state property.
say, okay, yeah, and the gas
Mr.
station was right up there.
Walls.
And I'll tell you
Yeah.
the truth, when we got out and started seeing the gas chamber, I where it looked like something at a Ren fair.
Oh
It
yeah.
didn't look quite real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looked like a little. To me, it looked like a little chapel.
It was out of place. Yeah, just this little. I thought like a
It's a
observatory or
little
something.
Yeah.
hut. Yeah, well, yeah, because it was weirdly
Or an
shaped too.
outhouse
I mean,
at a
it had
campground.
It was a
Round,
dome,
dozy.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
weird. I expected, I'll be honest, when I walked in there, I expected it to be very heavy, very dark, much like the first place. I expected to really
Like the death
feel
row.
it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I did not.
No,
I didn't
I
either.
was more disgusted with the people cutting up in there.
Right, but in there, it almost
Not
makes you
showing
cry though, but
respect.
it felt clean.
It
Yeah.
felt okay. Well,
I agreed.
It's got lights. It's got the sunlight.
Well,
beating
they
in
had already
it.
come to terms with it.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
There was no more fighting it.
Well, and in there, it
I don't know
wasn't.
why I'm crying about it, but that's how it felt to me. I just felt like
Because it was awful.
It's an escape.
yeah, you felt like that's how they felt. They're like
A relief.
That because this building was so small. So yes, you're in a cell. But
you were in a cell
you're
last
not-
night looking at the room.
yeah,
But the cell was
but
so
you're
much
in-
nicer than their
It
other
was.
cells.
It was.
you're in your
Yeah.
own cell. You're not
Yeah.
in a literal hole in the
true.
ground anymore.
And you don't
You
have six
come
people
there,
sleeping
you
there
know,
with
it's,
you.
Right.
you know that this is what it's going to happen. It's not going to be a surprise. You go in there and you do, and you go to sleep, and that's it.
But you just felt the relief. And that just makes me so sad.
No, it was exactly how I felt too. It's like, well, and as you said, people were cutting up in there like it was funny or something, which was
Yeah.
really weird.
Yeah.
It wasn't sad, it wasn't dark, but I just felt bad because
Those people,
they were
people
just so relieved
made
that they
me
didn't leave
feel-
depression.
Yeah. It was so weird.
Yeah.
To be fair, I would have felt relieved if I had been in the first place that we went.
Oh god.
I would have just been so happy to not have
Just
to go
get
back
out
there. Just let's
Yeah.
just get it over with.
Yeah.
I mean, it
No more
it gives a
appeals,
lot
no more
of
bullshit. I'm
perspective
done.
on people being able to say, okay, fine, just kill me, I want it over with.
And how these people could sit there and smile and take Instagram photos. And I was like, hang on, y'all, do you understand? This isn't just, oh, look, it's a gas chamber chair, how kooky and creepy.
Well, and I thought
people
you're
lay there all
sitting,
night and watched it.
you're sitting in a spot where people have died.
Multiple people died.
Where they've lost their bowel movements and stuff because that's what happens when you die, right?
Everything.
Yeah, that's why
comes
that
with
big.
death.
Remember that big sink? That was to clean up all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And these people are sitting in
Drains in the
that and
floor.
laughing.
You don't put drains in the floor unless there's some drain.
Exactly.
I mean, everything about their behavior was just, no, this isn't appreciating
what-
something
that was-
spooky. This is not understanding what you're seeing.
That was one of the worst parts of this experience was those people.
Yeah, the people
the
who thought
lack
it
of
was
empathy
funny.
with all
Yeah.
these people.
Yeah,
They just-
exactly. This,
Well,
how
they were
could you-
trying to provoke ghosts. They weren't down there like, hey, okay, come talk to us. They were like, you're just a bunch of blah, 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 and you
Yeah.
deserved it down here and all that. I mean, they were trying to
Yeah.
provoke them. It's like, if you really believed in ghosts and you really believed that was a human being, why would you say that to them?
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think
These
Jason and I
are the
talked about it a
people who
little
do
bit.
the same kind of stuff on the internet now.
Yeah.
Right, they're trolls.
These are
Human
the
spirits are rare. And
I
to provoke a
do
human
know
spirit
that
that
we
actually
saw-
stayed
We
is a
went on
bad
that tour
idea.
with a bunch of internet trolls.
But the energy in there is very likely to
There's
have
no way around
attracted inhuman spirits as well, and provoking is a horrible idea. And I was just like, you people are really asking to go home with an attachment. Sorry.
Well, I'm not
You're
so
gonna go home with an
sure
attachment.
those people weren't like already having attachments.
Well,
to
I'm
be
sure maybe that
fair,
was driving some of their.
They were not.
because some of them weren't quite right. I'm pretty sure a couple
Oh,
of them
very-
were
no,
on
there's a
drugs.
Couple from
Yeah.
Nebraska,
Very
was it?
clearly.
They were sweet.
Yeah,
Was it Nebraska?
I think that
I think they were on meth. Just FYI.
Oh, that's yeah. They were definitely. I thought they were high. I thought they were just. I thought
They were
marijuana or
very
something.
They were
Yeah,
tweakers.
but
But they were
high
nice.
and
They were
they
nice.
at least not.
Yes.
They weren't showing out. They weren't.
No, they,
They
were
were not being
respectful.
awful.
Yeah,
Speaking from
I thought they were on
experience with
marijuana.
my family,
I didn't think it was
Yeah.
that.
high people
they were
are
definitely
not
meth heads.
always assholes.
No,
Very often,
Yeah.
but not always. No.
and it can change over very quickly in that state. But yeah,
But yeah, there were definitely
yeah,
people
they
that I
were-
was wondering. It's like,
they were
are you paying
definitely
attention
on
to what
something.
happened here? Are you
Right.
not? How are you missing the fact that humans
how are you
live
skipping
down
into the gas
here?
chamber?
They
They're here
How
to see a
big-
ghost, not human beings and their history.
They weren't
But
interested.
anything
They
that you
were
saw, if you saw anything there, it was because somebody died horribly or
human misery.
suffered horribly. There was nothing we were going to see there that was going to be cute and fun.
No.
It was either going to be something attracted by the energy there, which is not going to be nice,
Never going
or
to be
if
good
somebody
things.
did actually, and it's very possible, as much as these people suffered, that there are some that did stay. I'm not saying that I don't believe that human spirits can stay, but from what I can tell, and it's hard to prove anything, it seems that human spirits are rare to actually stay. They either leave an impression like a film,
Lots of
basically the loops that are unaware, they're not cognizant, they're not really there, it's just an impression.
People that are just
It's very, very rare to have a human
Yeah.
spirit that stays and maintains its personality and stuff, and so if they did, it is even more horrible to me. And then to provoke them, it's like they have suffered enough.
Yeah. At this
Absolutely
point,
not.
leave them alone.
And if you're going to provoke and it's not a human spirit, you deserve what you get.
You don't
Right.
know what you're pulling in.
Because they fed on
like
that
I said,
misery.
literally nothing has ever happened to me. And then you heard what happened when I asked Mom about it.
Yeah.
And she says, well, there were these creepy sounding winds one time in Utah. It's like, no, that doesn't count as a ghost.
No.
So, all right, yeah, apparently whole family ghost repellent.
Yeah.
But,
having lived in a haunted house,
the one and only thing that I absolutely know for certain is that we do not know as much as we think we know
right.
about anything.
Olivia,
That's what I'm saying. I
Brooke and
can't
were having
say
this conversation today with,
definitively.
I don't necessarily believe in aliens. I don't necessarily believe in ghosts, but I don't not believe in them because logically they could exist in ways that we just don't understand yet.
Yeah.
Actually, a coworker and I had a good
Like,
conversation one day about aliens, and if you don't believe that there's any possibility that you're not thinking about it hard enough.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like
It's
I'm
not
not
a non-zero
I'm not
chance.
gonna draw a line under any of that because there's actually not a way to know given our current
But just
scientific.
Given the number
Or
of
the
person
senses that we have
stories and
access
events
to
and things
aren't
that I have
accessing
read and
something
listened to
or
and
weird
watched.
things. I mean, think about blind cave
Just
lizards.
Yeah, but the human spirit thing, that
Somebody
is
comes
just
and pokes
my
them on the
opinion
back.
based.
I mean, what's that to them? You
Yeah.
know, because they don't have any concept of sight. So what are we missing? What do
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
not sense about
Yeah.
our world? Sharks with their electrical sense. I mean, what are we missing around us?
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff. Well, remember, we don't have just 5 senses.
No.
They admit that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that we probably have a sense that we don't have that would maybe explain ghosts and stuff a
Right.
little bit
Or
better.
maybe it's that there is a sense that we are then picking up on them.
Yeah, some
Yeah.
people have a little bit of it and some people don't.
Or you don't learn to listen to it. Or,
Yeah.
yeah, but I'd say overall this was a very, very educational trip. It was not educational. It wasn't what I
Absolutely.
expected.
Like our usual.
Yeah, I was actually expecting to be a little spookier. I was expecting to feel more like scared of ghosts and stuff, but instead I got so wrapped up in the history of it and what was actually there that it became totally different. But still very good. But I would like to take the history tour someday, and I want to learn more about the history on the spot.
Yeah.
And we have lots of pictures. Maybe we can put up with them.
We can put some of them. Yeah.
Got tons and
I don't
tons of
think anything's
pictures.
copyright or anything. So put some pictures.
Well, I mean, there are pictures that we took. None of them have ghosts. I got nothing. I've looked through
know.
everything.
I have no specific. Really, the only supernatural experience we had was the lack of it after the apology tour.
Yeah.
When they
Right,
swore
yeah.
that they were getting tons of
Yeah.
activity down there beforehand. That's really as close to supernatural as we got. Was
Yeah,
they
and I
said,
don't
"You
know
didn't
how many
deserve
of the
this," and
people
it got
actually
quieter.
saw, felt, heard anything in there. Because
Now that one room,
Because
I
we
will
didn't get a
put
chance-
money on was haunted.
Yeah, that room.
It was. I
That
didn't get any
room
pictures, but it
maybe-
was.
That room is the closest I have ever come to having any kind of experience.
It was like
There is
walking
no
into
place.
tar.
Yeah, there is no place that
Just
I
like-
have ever wanted to
Whoa.
leave so much.
Yeah.
It's-
I don't know if I made 5 seconds in that room. I walked in and went, and got right out. I couldn't
I
do
felt
it.
like that in
Anywhere
the
else
entire
you went
prison.
Anywhere else it wasn't that strong, but that was the strongest. Now, the dungeon. I did not feel comfortable. I had that kind of heartburn feeling down there.
Yeah, I just felt so
But at that
sad
point, I was
down
pretty
there.
stressed out, worried for you, because you were pretty stressed out. So at that point, I was
Yeah.
also worried for you.
I just didn't want to be down there because I can't imagine keeping somebody underground in a cage with no light, and I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. It wasn't really that I felt anything except for the empathy of what happened down there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I said, when I went up to the showers, I really wasn't scared or anything there. It was kind of actually
Even sitting
peaceful.
there alone, it was
Yeah.
fine. It was just.
Yeah, that last one I could have sat there
It's
for.
still dark and creepy, and yeah, when we went
For
and
you hear my
sat
dog scratching
on the chairs in the, where we would have been set up to watch a movie had they had the projectors on, and we're just sitting there. Low.
Yeah, I just wish I wish I knew somebody who
and-
had been there before the tornado to know how much it's the tornado basically did a cleaning of it, did a cleansing, or was it already like that because it was a better facility already?
Well,
maybe we'll get a response from somebody
Maybe
who
somebody
has
who
been.
has
Seen it.
I feel like it was a better facility because, I mean, I didn't feel anything in there.
It was definitely a better facility.
And
but-
also, think about how long ago it had been that the really bad stuff that happened there.
Right.
So it had time
'cause
to
the
kind of
dungeon
cleanse
stuff
itself.
was not happening.
Yeah, I didn't find out when they
in
put
the
you in the
80s.
dungeon.
That
but
was
it
older
not,
stuff.
Yeah, so it had time to kind of
Well,
get
they
rid of
say
some
it
of
was
that
not.
energy.
Solitary is still a thing today.
Well, in those rooms, it wasn't.
I don't
happening.
think it was. Yeah, those rooms weren't fit for habitation for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and they were talking about fairly recent guards who didn't know what was behind that door.
That's
because
right.
saw
They
it was
had.
locked.
That's right. They had locked it, and
You know,
people were
so-
surprised to find it in there.
And they went in and were like, "What?"
Which I'm
and
glad
find out the history and get freaked
quit
out on
using
their
it.
own. So it not that it was all that long ago in the grand scheme of things that it's happening, but it wasn't like there wasn't somebody
last
still
week.
alive who was a guard there who this happened back in the 80s and
It wasn't like 2004 in the other building, which had this newer feel and had this feeling
That
that it could have
second
been
one-
yesterday that happened there.
That second one definitely felt like it could still be happening.
Yeah.
It's like the orange suits, the shackles, the shuffling forward crayons,
Yeah.
cheek to jowl.
fix
through
the
those.
windows and you could put people in there.
Yeah, it
I mean,
looked way too
and
modern.
fix the windows and replace all of the missing toilets.
Yeah, the plumbing was gone.
And you
In a
could
lot
put
of
people in
places, yeah.
there. But yeah,
But it was just really. I
That,
was just so surprised. I was so surprised with how it turned out, how the tour turned out. It just wasn't what I was expecting.
I don't know what
I felt kind of guilty being like, oh, we're going to go on this trip. And then once I got there and realized what it was, I was like, why didn't I think of this? I did not even remotely think of this.
Well, they advertise it as a ghost tour,
Right.
and so they
Yeah.
hype you up for the ghosts.
Yeah.
And you get in there and you realize what you're really seeing.
And-
Well, if you're paying attention.
So
Yeah.
I was prepared for that, and that's why I honestly dreaded going, and I didn't really want
I
to
was
go.
worried about you being too stressed during it.
I didn't wanna
Because
go.
I'm concerned you were too stressed.
Yeah, I did. So I have a loved one, that's been there. So I didn't want to be there. I didn't really want to go. I went for you guys, and just to be with you guys. And I'm glad I went, but I was really dreading it.
And I'm sorry that you were dreading it that much. I didn't know how much you were dreading it.
So no.
I did not expect it to be as modern, the second one to be as modern as it was.
I wasn't expecting it either.
Just like all the pictures and stuff you see on the old building.
yeah, because none of us realized that it had still been a working prison up until 2004.
Right. I had in my head
None of
this
us
was
knew that until we got there.
1930s-ish, maybe
Yeah,
earlier.
it had been abandoned longer.
Yeah.
That it
And
wasn't.
we walk in and it's like,
that it
oh,
wasn't, contemporaneous with us in high school.
I just had this feeling of being trapped in there, and like it was
Yeah.
this claustrophobic feeling of
Because you're empathetic.
That was that second one. I can see it. I can close my eyes and I can just see what it must have been hurting people through there.
just that feeling
And my-
though of you can't go
Yeah, I'm like, I'm
anywhere
getting
and do
goosebumps.
anything.
Yeah. That feeling of being trapped like a rat.
You are trapped. It's
You're
being
like a
like
hamster in a freaking tube.
imagine being in an elevator,
there, it
stopping
kinda
and not
makes
being able to
me
get off.
wonder how they
That's
would
what it's
end up
like.
Getting prison movies shot there
Yeah.
after it was no longer a prison.
I don't know if it has or hasn't. I didn't see.
I feel like they would have put something
That would be
That's true, maybe.
in there about
Yeah.
the fact that such and such and such and such and such and such were here for making whatever movie it was.
Yeah.
So here's a question.
So it seems a little weird to me that they didn't go for that. I mean, not that they're going to get that many movie companies.
I
coming
believe
to
it may still be
Jefferson City,
state
Missouri.
owned, so maybe
But
there's some kind of limitations
permitting
or
might
something.
be-
Yeah, I don't know.
So that was my thought is like, okay, so this is a state prison or whatever. So how did they get the okay to do these ghost tours? And like, what is the purpose of that? Like, who's
It
making the
probably
actual money?
maintains the building.
Oh yeah, it's got to be
Probably
bringing
for
in money. I
maintenance.
mean, considering what we paid to go.
But what's the
What?
point of maintaining it? Why not just rip it down? It's a sad, horrible place.
Because it's
Because a lot of it is on historical register, like the Marmaduke House.
Yeah.
Well,
I believe
Marmaduke
parts
House
of
could stay, but
But
why
I
not
wouldn't be
tear
surprised-
all those other places down?
I should
Those-
look into it. I'm not sure if the A Hall
monstrosities.
may not be.
I
a
don't
historic
get it.
building. It may the A Hall and several
yeah.
other parts of it may
Could be.
be historic buildings.
If it was built,
I'm sure the wall is.
The
considering
wall was nice, and like I said, the Civil War
The facade on
one
the
was
back.
nice.
I'm
but
sure
that's
there's
the
parts
thing.
of it
And
that
then,
are
but then
registered.
think about it. Okay, so you rip it all down. How many people actually want to do?
What are you going to do with it? It's been built there.
Make it into condos.
Oh well,
and
actually,
live there.
several people I'm not sure probably would buy a condo.
Well, this is true.
Why
But-
not make it into a happy place, a park, or
But
yeah?
That's a good question.
Turn it all
I don't know where
into,
all the money
like-
goes exactly, but I'm assuming I just
I
assumed it was to
assume-
maintain it as a historical location.
yeah.
I mean,
And
they didn't
Just the
repair after the.
groundwork.
and in all honesty, maintain at a fairly minimal level.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't elegant by any means.
Yeah, they didn't do a
They're
lot of
not making a
repairs.
gigantic profit on this, and keeping things up as they
Maybe
were.
the money goes to something else too, because I mean,
I did. May
people were
just go
buying
into
stuff in that gift
state.
shop. And,
Yeah, it may just go into state coffers, and the
Well, yeah. let's
Do
not
whatever
think
the
about whatever happens with
appropriations-
that crap.
committee does with it. It
just
depends
paying
on
the tour
how
guides
it's
and
set up, whether
Keep
that's.
electricity on.
But particularly with the fact that there were police officers there.
Hi.
Sorry, the dogs had to come in. It's been raining off and on and they've been out a long time.
Hi, puppies. Well, we need to wrap up anyway.
Ponies.
All right.
So.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
So, but we'll add to this. We'll add to our capitals and ghosts adventures at some point.
Yeah, I feel like I read something just the other day that would add on to that tour concept, and it's escaping me right now.
Ah. Yes, you'll have to send it to the group chat. Oh,
Huh?
hi, gross. Hi, you just slobbered me.
she just got
Okie
drilled.
dokie. All right, I guess this is a good place for us to stop. We're just going to wrap it up right here and say we're signing off. And
Enjoy
we'll
the
catch you
pictures.
later in the month. Yeah, enjoy the pictures. I'll post a bunch.